Have you ever wondered what happens when nature's fiercest predators become unexpected heroes? At the first light of dawn, the valley lay silent beneath a pale sky. Frost clung to every tree, and the broad glacial river that cut through the land glimmered in half-frozen stillness. Steam rose in thin silver threads from the water's surface, drifting over the cracked ice shelves. It was the kind of morning where every breath became a visible cloud, and even the smallest sound seemed to echo across the empty wilderness. On the near bank, two trembling puppies stood side by side on a shelf of ice that jutted from the shore. Their names were Ash and Willow, siblings born late in the season, their bodies still small and fragile against the immensity of the wild. Their golden fur, usually bright and fluffy, was now darkened with icy water, clumping in messy tangles against their shivering frames. They had fallen into the river once already that morning, but had scrambled onto the ice, teeth chattering from the cold. Ash was the bolder of the two, stood slightly ahead, balancing awkwardly on his hind legs, front paws pressed together as though in prayer. His ears quivered and his eyes were wide, fixed on something across the river. Willow followed his lead, mimicking the pose though her legs wobbled, her body trembling with both fear and hope. Together, they let out shrill whines and short barks that pierced the stillness, sending echoes skittering across the frozen surface. Far across the river, on the opposite bank, a massive silhouette stirred in the mist. The bear. Her name was Bramble, though none of the wild creatures called her so, a full-grown mother bear. Her frame was immense, her thick brown-black coat shimmering faintly in the morning light. She had emerged from the forest in answer to the puppy's cries, curiosity and instinct pulling her from her solitary path. Her rounded ears pricked forward as she lifted her broad muzzle, sniffing the sharp air that smelled of ice, wet fur, and fear. She saw them clearly now, two helpless pups calling to her across the divide. But she also sensed something else, the deeper, desperate scent of another life. Ash and Willow did not bark in vain. Their small bodies danced in agitation on the ice shelf, noses lifting again and again toward the fractured channel of the river. There, halfway across, clinging to a jagged ridge of broken ice, was their mother. Her name was Lumen. Lumen was no longer the strong, radiant figure she once had been. Her golden coat was matted with slush, each strand heavy with the weight of cold. Ribs showed beneath her fur, her strength spent from the fight to keep her head above the current. Her claws scratched frantically at the ice, dislodging sharp shards that tumbled with soft splashes into the black water. The sound was terrible, like a clock ticking away the last seconds of her strength. She lifted her muzzle toward the sky and let out a low, broken whine, the kind of sound that carried the raw ache of a mother who knew her children might be left alone. Ash and Willow answered with frantic barks, running in small circles at the edge of the ice. But their little paws could not reach her. Their voices alone could not save her. It was Bramble the bear who turned her heavy head and began to step forward. Her paws landed with a crunch on the brittle ice. Each step was deliberate, her massive claws digging in, anchoring her as she crossed the fractured river. She was a creature of monumental strength, yet every move carried patience, as if she understood the fragility of the path ahead. Ash and Willow, filled with renewed hope, scampered along the shore beside her, always keeping her in sight. They barked, then paused, then barked again, turning their heads back toward their mother, guiding Bramble with their frantic signals. Halfway across, Lumen clung still, her breaths ragged, her eyes glazed with exhaustion. She tried once more to pull herself up, but her forelegs gave out, slipping back into the icy bite of the river. Bramble lowered her head, scanning the chaos of broken ice. Then, with a deep rumbling growl, part effort, part determination, she raised her forelimbs and brought them down with controlled power. Slabs of ice cracked apart. She tore at the frozen barrier, prying loose chunks and shoving them aside with immense sweeps of her paws. The river groaned, the surface shifting as pieces drifted away into the current. Slowly, steadily, she carved a channel wide enough for her bulk to move through. When the path was clear, she did not hesitate. Bramble lowered herself into the water. Her shoulders disappeared beneath the icy surface, yet her movements were steady, unhurried. The river that would have swallowed Lumen was powerless against the bear's strength. She swam with a confidence born of countless winters, her head lifted above the water, her breath steaming. She reached Lumen in a matter of moments. The dog's body was limp, her eyes dull with fatigue, but her ears flicked faintly as the great bear approached. Bramble extended her muzzle, nudging against Lumen's soaked neck. Then, with a gentleness that defied her size, she clamped her jaws around the dog's scruff and heaved upward.
Ah!
Muscles rippled beneath her thick fur as she lifted, carrying Lumen clear of the water and placing her onto the solid slab of ice she had prepared. Lumen collapsed immediately, sides heaving, legs trembling beneath her. But she was alive. Ash and Willow, driven by instinct, scrambled across the newly formed gap, Paws slipping on the ice as they rushed to her side. They pressed their small bodies against her ribs, nuzzling into her wet coat, tails wagging in weak, shivering arcs. Bramble rose from the water, droplets cascading down her massive form. She shook once, sending a spray of mist into the morning air, then stood tall, her breath steady. Her eyes moved from Lumen to the puppies and back again. Something passed through her expression or recognition, perhaps of the bond they shared, or the memory of her own cubs long grown. She stepped closer. The dogs did not flinch. Instead, Ash and Willow looked up at her with wide eyes, as if asking for one more favor. Bramble responded with a subtle tilt of her head, a silent gesture, and then turned toward the bank. The family followed. In single file, the bear led them across the crunching snow, along the river bank, where frost clung thick to the branches. Her steps were sure, her presence steady. At last, she guided them to a sheltered alcove beneath a rocky overhang, where a small cave yawned like a waiting sanctuary. Its entrance was lined with straw and dry grass, gathered long ago, now partially hidden by frost-heavy branches. Inside, the cave floor was dry, and sunlight pooled faintly through the cracks, warming the air. The smell was of earth, pine, and old leaves. Ash and Willow tumbled inside first, pressing against their mother's flank as she staggered in behind them. Lumen curled around her pups, her body weak, but her heart steady. She tucked their noses beneath her chin, holding them as if she would never let go again. Bramble lingered at the entrance, her silhouette filling the space for a moment before she stepped back. She raised her muzzle, scanning the air, ensuring the area was safe. Then she retreated into the shadows of the tree line, her immense form blending with the mist. Her footprints, deep and wide in the snow, faded with each passing minute, until only the quiet marks of the dogs remained. In the soft glow of dawn, the rescued family lay safe, their breaths rising and falling in unison. And in that stillness, surrounded by the wilderness that was both cruel and kind, they found refuge, not just in the cave, but in the memory of an act of compassion. It was a reminder that the world, though divided by instinct and survival, sometimes allows space for something greater, for kindness that needs no reason, and for connections that melt even the coldest of barriers.